Good morning, afternoon, evening, depending on wherever you're listening to us from, and welcome to the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, the podcast where six random guys from around the British Isles get together to talk about anything and everything Detroit Lions. My name is Anthony Fitzpatrick, and I am joined by my co-host this evening, Ryan McCluskey, which can only mean one thing. College football is back, baby. We've got some NCAA in our lives again, and I don't know about you, Ryan, but I couldn't be happier to be watching again. I had a blast this weekend watching a few of the games, and I'm really looking forward to the season that's about to come.
Oh no, yeah, like the first like week zero was great. Like there was some heavy one-sided teams, like there was some quarterbacks to watch, like I say, and teams didn't disappoint. Like say, some people put out a statement already in their first week of intention, like there's going to be some really competitive conferences this year, and like I say, some people have already hit the ground running. So I think it was fun to watch, and like I say, some teams are probably in trouble already, like I say, because they won't be happy with how they performed in week one.
Tell me about it. We will get to it shortly because there's only been 5 games so far this weekend in Division 1, so we're going to take a little look at those. But I mean, there were some ass whoopings handed out this weekend, and there's already quite a few players who are starting to stand out, and we'll take a little look at them as well. So this is episode 2 of our podcast. Obviously, we had our flagship show last week, and we're really glad to anyone who took the time to listen to us. We did get a few plays, a bit more than we expected, to be fair, and so yeah, anyone who took the time to listen to the pod, we're really, really grateful for. And as the weeks go by, this will get smoother as we go. So today, as I say, the season has already begun now. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through a little bit of college news first, involving a very funny story, which we're about to start with in a moment. Then we're going to take a look at the first week of results, do a little breakdown of the games, some of the players who stood out, and discuss those. And then we're going to turn our attention towards this coming weekend, because when I say the schedule is stacked, I mean it is stacked. There are a lot of good games coming up, and we're going to talk about some of them. If we talked about more, we'd be here forever, but we've picked out some really good ones for you. So that'll be coming afterwards. And then we're going to have a little look at receivers, little hidden gems who might not be on the mainstream media's radar yet. That was a guest request last week, and we will go through that later. Ryan has been very busy at work scouring through some of the smaller schools and divisions looking for the receivers of the future. So, we've got a lot to crack on with. So, yeah, we're going to get going straight away. So we're going to dive straight into the news, and I'll come to you in a sec, Ryan, but I mean, this first story this week was absolutely unbelievable. So this is basically the story of a high school game, which was shown on ESPN to a very large nationwide audience. And this is the story of a school called BishopSycamore, and they were playing the top ranked high school team in the country, IMG. Now, this was a school who apparently went to the representatives of the networks, said they got a lot of Division 1 talent in their side, and they wanted an opportunity on the television, and it came to the game. And the score ended up being 58-0 to IMG. Now, bear in mind, IMG, their quarterback is committed to Florida State. They've got linemen who are committed to Alabama, and you know what the quality of the guys there are like. This is a really good team, and it ended up in an absolute whitewash, and something didn't really quite sit with the execs at ESPN. And I mean, the story that started coming out afterwards was absolutely unreal, because it turns out that this BishopSycamore school actually doesn't exist. There is no school that is affiliated. I think it's with the Ohio State Football Association, where they're meant to reside. And it turns out that the Paragon Marketing Group, the guys who sort of vet the teams going onto television, just didn't vet them at all. And when it came to game day, ESPN couldn't verify any of the players on their databases because they didn't exist. And then even further deep dive found that their website was just a blogspot page, which is now inactive. I know because I tried to get it on myself. And the listed address of the school is just somebody's house in a residential estate, literally just a regular house, which is unbelievable. And then the deep dive went even further. And it turns out that most of the players who were playing were JUCO dropouts. That's from the junior college game. Most of them aged 19 or over, a lot in their 20s. And bearing in mind, IMG as a high school, their players were maybe 16 or 15 years old. And then just to put the icing on the cake, it came out that the head coach of this team, who has since been fired after this game, although I don't know how you get fired from an imaginary team, had an active arrest warrant out against him as well, although I've not been able to find out what that was for. I mean, Ryan, what an absolute story this. I mean, I could go on for a lot longer because there was a thread on it on Twitter which went on for ages and ages and ages, the history of this team. But that's just unreal, is it not? It shouldn't be happening in this day and age that a school that doesn't exist blags its way onto national TV.
Nope, it should never happen. Like you say, I read somewhere, I'm pretty sure BishopSycamore, they're a bit like the Open University. So they have like online charter classes. There is someone that goes by that name, like an education board. But like I said, this football team was by no means associated with them. They turned up with stock black jerseys and helmets. They didn't even look like they were associated to a school. They didn't even try to play like they were. Like this school has managed to play, I think, like 6 games, like at how with varying difficulty. They've lost all of them. They've conceded like 40 points, like in nearly every game, scored a handful. One of the games was just 2 days before this went live on ESPN. So they were playing 2 games in 3 days. Like this guy is literally like taking a bunch of, like, say, grown men, like say there were guys running off the field that looked in their late 20s, 30s, like taking, like you say, like a recreational Sunday league team, and he's blagged his way into ESPN. They were going on like rivals.com and 24/7 looking for these Division 1 like talents, I suppose they had, and not a single name was found. They were talking about this during the game, and the commentators were even confused, like, how don't we know any of these players are? There's no names on the jerseys, so we can't even corroborate who should be on the field, who's calling the plays. And no, they were pasted by high school children. Like I say, IMG, like probably the #1 team in the state of Florida. Like they're a big program, and I think even in the end, they were confused. They weren't happy about the game. They didn't feel like it was a level playing field, but they handled their business. So you got to applaud them for that. But someone at ESPN head must be rolling, because how this game was televised has brought a lot of bad press and attention, but also it's quite a brilliant story and probably got them tons of clicks as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you touched on it there. Obviously, it is an amazing story as to what's happened, and it's quite funny how they've done it in a way. But then you look past the surface of it, and you do realize that, I mean, this was really dangerous. I mean, in terms of BishopSycamore, they're going up against fully trained. I mean, I know they're only 15 or 16-year-olds, but they're going up against trained athletes, and the younger ones there looked really stocky and not prepared. I mean, they could have had some serious injuries done to them, by linemen who were growing, big guys who could absolutely just maul them into oblivion. Or on IMG's side, if you've got a 30-year-old, 340-pound defensive tackle coming down on a 15-year-old offensive lineman, he could break his leg. He could do all sorts of damage. He could stop his NFL path before it even begins. I mean, again, just from a health and safety standpoint, it's absolutely unreal that this was allowed to take place. I don't know. It's such a weird story, but we'll move on from it now. I don't think we'll ever see anything like that again. However, returning into NCAA football now in the division, a weird story here out of South Carolina. Now, they compete in the SEC East Conference, and unfortunately, a couple of days ago, they lost their starting quarterback, Luke Doty, to injury. And in his place, they have said that they're going to be starting graduate assistant coach Seb Nolan. Now, this is weird because he's on the coaching staff. He's not actually there as a player. He was brought to South Carolina to be part of Shane Beamer's coaching staff. He's the head coach there at South Carolina. But it turns out that they've had to put him back on the field. Now he's able to do this because there's been a rule change in the NCAA allowing fall athletes an extra year of eligibility if they should need it. He'd done his time and he'd just moved into coaching full stop. But now he's able to make the transition from coach to player to fill in this void and avoid them having to use their redshirt senior backup, who they obviously feel is not ready for it. Now, Noland played at Iowa State for a couple of years before he transferred to North Dakota State University last year, where he won the FCS championship, backing up Trey Lance, obviously the number 3 pick going on there. So it's going to be interesting to see how he does this weekend, Ryan. It's not often you see a member of the coaching staff suddenly suit up on game day.
No, this one's an odd one. Like you say, it shows very little faith in the backup. It does worry me. Like all full respect to Zeb standing in. He had a bad year last year. 700 yards, 5 touchdowns to 6 interceptions. It's certainly not ideal. Like, it's not how South Carolina wanted to start their year. They're hoping to have him back next week, but that's no guarantee. Like I say, with the eligibility, he's technically, because he's a grad student, like say, even though he's a coach and now he's on the roster as the coaching staff, he still is allowed to use that 1 year of eligibility. Like say, otherwise they would have been forced to turn to an inexperienced backup. So I suppose they've got lucky. He's getting his chance to play in the big leagues, like say, like it's the SEC. I don't expect it to go very well, even though how well he knows the team. He played 3-4 months ago, like say, because like they had spring fall. So his arms are warm, but he didn't play very well. So it could be a very interesting game to watch this week. I don't think it's going to go very well for South Carolina on their offense.
Well, I tell you what we'll do. We'll put a watch on that game, and we'll do a Zeb Nolan week watch, and we'll get back to you next week on how it goes. Who knows? He may break out, but likelihood, as Ryan says, it's not going to go very well for South Carolina. But I think they hope to have their starter back the week after that. Moving on with the news, the college's most well-traveled wide receiver, I believe it is, Tate Martell, has had surgery on his thumb, and they're not sure he's going to play in his final year. I mean, this may seem a bit of a trivial thing, but his story and his journey is actually quite a long one. I know, Ryan, he's a favorite of yours. Why don't you tell us a little bit about Tate Martell and his journey through the leagues, which is very extensive?
Yeah. Oh, I wouldn't say a favorite. Like I say, he's a little brat. Like I say, no one likes this kid. Like I say, and it's not all for his own, but he started at BishopSycamore, a very big high school in Las Vegas, where he was very successful, but he got in trouble a lot for the things he wrote on social media. He was tweeting like during games, like bloody winding up fans, like talking about states. Like, this kid had a big chip on his shoulder, thought it was something else. Like say, he went into I'm trying to think. I think it was Ohio State. I think his original recruit was, but he, like say, he entered his name in the transfer portal very quickly because he couldn't win the starting job. He wound up, like say, he went to he's been at Miami, where he once again has just struggled. He couldn't beat anyone out for the starting quarterback job, so he decided to transition to wide receiver, where he saw very little action or playing time. Like he couldn't make it work, and he was a very little factor. He played the odd special teams, and now he's got 1 year left of eligibility. He's gone back to where it all started, high schools at UNLV. So he's out in Vegas for the Rebels. He's got like one last rodeo. He's very known on social media. Like I say, I think something like this. I think he's got a bit of a famous sister as well that everyone talks about. But no, this kid he's known for running his mouth. Like I say, he's not been able to back up at the college level. Wherever he's been, he's known as a quitter. He's had this is like his last rodeo. He's hurt his thumb. He's had surgery on it. He's working out right now, but he doesn't look ready anytime soon through injury. Who knows if he's ever going to play? Now, I personally, I don't like Tate Martell, the person, but as a player, I'd love to see what he could actually do. Like say, even at a team that's not in the highest tiers, but I think he deserves a chance to play at some point. I'm hoping he just gets 1 or 2 games, but no, it's very highly likely that he'll bow out of his college career and probably just go poof into everyone's back of imagination. And the history and the story of Tate Martell unfortunately will be over just as quickly as it started. Like I
Yeah,
say, he's well known for his social media, his antics, rubbing people the wrong way. But no, he's not stuck it out wherever he's been.
yeah. If you want to take a look at one of college's finest personalities, then yeah, do give him a look up. And I think there is a thread somewhere about his college career, all the places he's gone. He just moves all the time, which is quite amusing to look at. But anyhow, that sort of ends it for the weird and wonderful stories knocking around in college this week. The last bit of news that we're going to discuss is going to segue us nicely into looking at the first week of results. So, there's one head coach in the Big Ten who is already feeling the pressure. Now, the Big Ten is the division with the Wolverines, the Spartans, the Michigan side. So, Nebraska head coach Scott Frost, he has landed himself in very hot water with his team's fan base this week after admitting that about half of his game plan went out the window when they lined up how they did against us. And this is a reference to their game this week against Illinois and their defensive scheme. Apparently, when they lined up on the field against them, he said half of his game plan was done. I didn't know what he was going to be able to do. And that was after the team's opening day defeat to Illinois. That's effectively admitting that they hadn't prepared anywhere near enough for their opposition. Because if you've been watching the tape, if you've been watching, how they play, you're going to know how they're going to line up against you. Or at least you're going to have a system in place, which means half of your own game plan is not moot. I mean, there's honesty and there's just things you really shouldn't admit, even if you're an honest person. Ryan, what did you think when you saw that? That is really not the sort of thing you want to be hearing from your head coach first game of the season, is it?
No. To say Scott Frost is on the hot seat now would be an understatement. He's probably got third-degree burns. Like this guy, his career up to date has not been great. And like I say, Nebraska for years now have struggled immensely. Like they are on a downward climb, and they're a big team at the Cornhuskers. They shouldn't be doing like this. Like how you can come out and say like after a few drives you almost threw in the towel because they threw something at you didn't like is extremely worrying, and it says a lot to how much research and preparation they've done. How can you be surprised by what a team is going to show you like halfway through a game? Like they're very much in trouble. Like say, they couldn't throw the ball. Like say, Adrian Martinez. Like say, he did great work on the ground. I think he rushed about 110 yards. But when it came to moving the ball through the air, very little work. Like say, to be a Cornhuskers fan, it was a detrimental and very telling first game of the season that you're in trouble this year. And like say, Scott Frost probably won't survive it.
Well, you sort of skirted onto the game there. So, as I say, we're going to segue now into looking at the first week of results. So, there were 5 games. So, there's probably no better place to start than Illinois, Nebraska. So, this was a battle of teams, as I say, in the Big Ten. The Michigan team divisions and the Illinois Fighting Illini, I think they call them. That is what I'm calling them anyhow. They came out 30-22 winners against the Cornhuskers. So just a few of the stats from that game. On Illinois' side, their quarterback, Artur Sikowski, he completed 12 of 15 passes for 124 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's actually the backup there. Their starter, Brandon Peters, was taken off with a shoulder injury not far into the first quarter. So that's a decent showing there for him. In the running game, Mike Epstein went for 16 carries for 75 yards and a touchdown at about 5 yards average a carry. And Reggie Love II, he got 12 carries for 45 yards at about 4 yards a carry. And then in the receiving game, Deuce Spann led the wide receiver call. He just got a single reception, but it was for 45 yards, and it was an absolutely beautiful catch in the 5 in the tightest of windows. We're going to try and put up a little clip of it for you because it really was a good catch. And then Isaiah Williams got 6 receptions for 41 yards and a touchdown. On the defensive side of things, defensive back Tony Adams got 10 solo tackles and an assisted tackle, so a good day for him. And defensive back Sidney Brown, he got 6 solo tackles and 3 assisted tackles. And the defense in general, they sacked Martinez 5 times, shared it around different players. They really made life difficult for him that day. And then on the Nebraska side, Ryan's already mentioned Adrian Martinez, their quarterback. He went 16 of 32 for 232 yards and a touchdown. Obviously 16 of 32, only a 50% completion ratage. Not good. And he also had a fumble, which was a scoop and sprint. Basically, they picked it up and ran it back for a touchdown just at the end of the first half at a really critical time, which really turned the game in Illinois' favor. In the running game, Martinez led that, 17 carries, 111 yards, 6.5 yards per carry and a touchdown, including actually a very lovely 75-yard run from the quarterback to get into the end zone, which was actually really nice. But as Ryan's alluded to, he missed a lot of throws. He missed his open 6'9" tight end. How you miss a 6'9" tight end, I don't really know. And then their starting running back, Gabe Irvin Jr., he got 12 carries for 33 yards. On the receiving side, Oliver Martin was the standout, the wide receiver there. He got 6 receptions, 103 yards. That's nearly 17 yards a throw, and got a touchdown. Including a beautiful 46-yard catch over the shoulder on the run whilst getting harassed by a corner. It was an absolutely lovely catch, and I'm going to be taking a look at him a little bit more because he had a really good game. And then on their defense, linebacker Nick Heinrich, 4 tackles, 7 assisted tackles. But the standout there was offensive linebacker Feldarius Payne. He got 2 tackles, 3 assisted tackles, and he also got 2 sacks, both in the first quarter of the game. I mean, Illinois really, really harassed Adrian Martinez into a lot of mistakes. Did you get to see much of that game, Ryan? Because when looking at it, actually Nebraska started really well. They were all over Illinois to start with and really just didn't give them a lot to go with. But then Martinez really messed up a drive when they were in the end zone. He missed about 3 wide open throws in a row. And then, his offensive line wasn't really giving him much help either, forcing him to throw on the run a lot, which was just not good for him. And then it all just really fell apart. They gave away a safety. Their cornerback, Cam Taylor-Britt, caught a catch from a punt. He was running back towards the end zone. He slipped into the end zone and then got tackled in there. It was a kick he should just have let go out. And then after that, Illinois just really took over. I mean, what did you think about that game, Ryan? I mean, Nebraska, everyone's slating their quarterback, everyone's slating their head coach. They gave away that stupid safety. It's really not a good start to the season for them, is it?
No, it was a bad day at the office, and the stats are misleading because, like I say, all those rushing yards for Martinez, they weren't designed runs. It's because the offensive line could not keep that defense out. He was already sacked 5 times. He was running for his life. He's just nimble enough, like say, managed to break off like the 75-yard run, another 40 yards. Like, these weren't yards he wanted to pick up. Like, he was just trying to make stuff happen, extend plays with his legs, and which he managed to do. He started well. As you mentioned, the scoop and score probably changed the momentum of the game. Just before the half, you just want to see the half out, and that is a disaster. You can't give that up. Like I say, it was essentially a 1-score game. Now, with Illinois, they did pretty well. Like you say, when your backup comes in, like you say, you tell them like one thing, just protect the ball. Like you say, hand it off till you get a feeling. And he did. They moved the ball really well. Both running backs combined well. And like I say, when he was asked to complete, like you say, the mid to short range throws, like you say, he completed nearly all of his passes. Unfortunately, like you say, a lot of this will be overshadowed by Brandon Peters getting hurt. Like you say, it's never good to lose your starting quarterback. Like you say, I hope he's okay and like he's going to return at some point this season quickly, because that can really screw up a game plan. But there were good things, like say, from both teams. Like say, Illinois in the end just managed to, I suppose, creep over the line, and because of Nebraska's too many mistakes. But no, like you say, especially with a conference game, when you open with a conference game, they're the big ones you want to win, because that's where you get the advantage over teams when you're trying to, like say, make bowl games, and when people are looking at your schedules. Beating guys in and around you is always key.
Yeah, I think you've already mentioned the injury to Peters is big for Illinois. I don't know about you, but I'm not sure they're going to be fighting in the upper echelons of the Big Ten this year, despite that win. Although I will say their defensive line did look really good and may carry them to a few wins if they're able to carry out there. I mean, do you really see them doing much in the Big Ten this year, or is it sort of going to be a bit of a mixed year for them, depending on the quarterback situation?
Even with the quarterback, no. Illinois, there was one of those teams like every year for them, let's just try to get to a bowl game. Let's try to win 6 or 7 games, get a run at being bowl eligible. Like I say, they never have loftier aspirations than that. But like I say, it's a good start for them. Nebraska, I'm worried for. Like you say, if they go on a run of, like say, a few losses, Scott Frost will probably get the axe.
Yeah, it's not good that there's so much heat getting put towards your team week one, especially after such a long time away from the game. You think your fans would try and give you a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, but no, they are been very hard on them. And although I will say the atmosphere was absolutely intense. I didn't see the full game, but I saw the extended highlights. You saw a lot of it, and seeing fans in the crowd again was big, wasn't it? I mean, it makes so much noise. You can barely hear it sometimes. I bet it's one of the best things to be able to go to one of those games and join in.
Oh yeah, the crowds are bigger. They're usually louder, like you said. The atmosphere to an NFL game, college is worlds apart. Like some NFL games, I imagine, are probably pretty quiet. Like say, you never get that with college. Like say, you've got your student section, so there's always someone making a bit of noise, and you have a band that always can generate so much noise and help be on your side with the crowd.
Yeah, definitely. Think of a few NFL teams where the atmosphere ain't the best in the world, not looking at you teams in LA or Jacksonville. But anyhow, we move on from that. We've got a few more games to go. So next, we spent a little bit of time on Nebraska and Illinois in the Big Ten. Now we're moving to the Mountain West Conference, and maybe a little less time on this because there was an absolute blowout here. This was the Fresno State Bulldogs, who, as I say, they reside in the Mountain West Conference, playing against the Connecticut Huskies, who are one of those independent schools we were telling you about this week. They're not affiliated to a particular division. They sort their schedules out in advance, but part of me tells me they might have regretted the route they've taken, because Fresno State ended up winning 45-0. It was an absolute complete blowout. So on the Fresno side of the ball, on the offense, quarterback Jake Haener, he went 20 for 26 for 331 yards and 3 touchdowns. Now, Haener's probably someone you're going to be hearing a little bit more about, because there's a very talented group of quarterbacks in the Mountain West this year. There's him, there's Carson Strong, one of my favorites we're going to talk about later, and there's a few more we're going to get to. But he had a really good game, even if the opposition maybe wasn't the best in the world. You can only beat what's put in front of you, and he had a really strong game there. In the running game, running back Ronnie Rivers went 13 carries for 58 yards, and Jordan Mims went 7 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown. In the receiving game, Jalen Cropper, 3 receptions for 87 yards. That's nearly 30 yards per throw and a touchdown. Ronnie Rivers, again, the running back, he went 2 receptions for 66 yards and a touchdown at 33 yards a throw. And wide receiver Josh Kelly got 3 receptions for 54 yards. That's 18 yards per throw. So Fresno really going to town with the deep balls on that one. I'll quickly go through Connecticut. There's not much to give. Their quarterback, Jake Sergiotis, went 12 for 24 for 61 yards. Running back Kevin Mensah topped the running room with 11 carries for 31 yards. That's not even 3 yards a carry. Wide receiver Cameron Ross led in receptions. He had 5 for 37. And then on defense, Diamond Harrell, defensive back, he had 8 solo tackles, but they had no sacks, and just a single interception. An independent school getting completely blown out the water there by Fresno State, Rye.
I don't mean to be too harsh, but it's been going around, like I said, people have been saying this for a few years. UConn are terrible. There's no point in them having a football team. For what it costs them to probably run it, they're terrible. Like they get beaten heavily on a regular basis. And like I feel for them, they must have some very willing and patient fans, like, because this was a blowout. Like I say, Fresno State and no mugs, like it's a 3-horse race in the Mountain West Conference. Like say them, San Jose State and Boise State. Like there's some real rivalries really cropping up there, and they've put their name firmly in the hat in the last few years. Like say they've had a few, I think, double-digit win seasons. Like say Jake Hayner is just going to be another guy to watch. It was pretty much perfect in all 3 phases from the ball from then week 1. It will get, like I say, people shouldn't read too much into it. It will get significantly harder. That is a nice way to start your season with someone like UConn. But no, they handled their business very well.
Exactly, like you say, you can only beat what is put in front of you. But I mean, anyone looking for potential quarterbacks to spring out of nowhere and really put their mark on the draft this year, the Mountain West's the place to be, surely, isn't it? You've Jake Hayner, Carson Strong, you've got the guys at San Jose State, Boise State. There's a lot of talented guys who are going in the draft next year, and they're going to make some noise, aren't they?
Yeah, like I say, for mid to late round guys, you've got Boise State, you've got Honk Bockmeyer. I don't know if he's eligible, but we've got a guy at San Jose State that we're going to come on to shortly who is probably going to be putting up Heisman numbers, but not be in the race.
Yeah, absolutely. But like I say, we'll come to it a little bit more later because we're going to go through some more of these guys. So yeah, Fresno State blowing out the Huskies there. The next game we're going on to, me and you both actually watched, and I enjoyed this. It was a good game, even if it was a slightly one-sided affair. So this was an interconference, rivalry. So you got the UCLA Bruins. They are of the Pac-12, facing off against the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors. They're from the Mountain West Conference. And again, another very one-sided game here. UCLA came out 44-10 winners. Just to quickly go through again some of the stats on UCLA's side. Quarterback Dorian Thompson-Robinson went 10 for 20, 130 yards, 1 touchdown. Again, only a 50% completion rating, which is not the best in the world. But the guy we're probably going to talk about most from this came in their running back room. So Zach Charbonnet. Now, Wolverines fans are going to know who he is because he's played for them for the last 2 years, or had been. He's now at UCLA. He only got 6 carries, but his stat line, 106 yards at nearly 18 yards a carry, 3 touchdowns. We'll talk about him when I've gone through this, but an amazing game and one of the standout performances of opening weekend. And then you had Britton Brown. He had 13 carries for 78 yards, nearly 6 yards per carry, which is very respectable, but not against the 18 yards of Zach Charbonnet. And he got a touchdown himself, another one who had a really good game. And I've just put into perspective how they did it. So UCLA in this game, 41 rushing attempts altogether, just 22 pass attempts. And in the receiving game, that again was led by a running back, Kazmir Allen. He had 2 receptions for 47 yards at nearly 24 yards to throw and a touchdown, including a really, really good 44-yard grab. And then on defense, there were a couple of noticeable performances. Defensive lineman Detona Jackson, he had 1 solo tackle, 2 assisted tackles, half a sack, and an interception. And defensive back Mo Oslin III led the tackle league with 5. Then on Hawaii's side, not a great deal to look at. QB Chevan Cordero, he was 25 of 47 for 220 yards, 1 touchdown. He threw 2 interceptions. Now, bearing in mind, UCLA, 41 rushes, 22 pass attempts. Hawaii, 53 pass attempts, just 20 rushes, which shows you who was in charge that game and who was needing to throw to stay in it. in the running back room, the top guy was D.D. Hunter. He had 7 carries for just 20 yards, which shows you their running game was completely abandoned to start with. And then in the receiving game, Calvin Turner Jr., who's a wide receiver, running back hybrid, he got 5 receptions for 50 yards. And then wide receiver Aaron Cephas, who is no relation to Quintez before you start, he got a single reception, but it was for 49 yards. And on the defensive side of the ball, Jonah Laulu, he got 5 solo tackles and 2 sacks, the only sacks or interceptions that Hawaii put up. We both watched this one, Rye. What were your initial thoughts from this one? It was a good game for me, but another one that ran away from a team a bit and was a bit one-sided towards the end.
Yeah, it was a slow burner. Like DTR, like I said, Dorian Thompson-Robinson, he started very slowly. His first half wasn't very good. But what they did was, like I say, they established a run game behind a fantastic O-line. Like, they were probably the MVPs of the game. They created huge holes. Like I said, they established the run, which opened up the pass game. Like I say, Zach Charbonnet, I'm pretty sure, like, by the end of the second quarter, he already had 86 yards and 2 touchdowns. So he did all his work in that first half. They milked the clock with such a good ground game. And like I said, they punished him. He was a big bruising guy. He's like nearly 6'1", but he's really balanced. Like I say, he's going to be a guy that could run all over the Pac-12 this year. Like I say, they complemented the run well. And then in the second half, they warmed up DTR's arm a little bit, got him zipping the ball about. Like I say, they didn't give him too much work, like I say, because they didn't need to. And like I say, Hawaii were just chasing the game constantly. They were forced, they could not establish the run whatsoever. UCLA's booked defensive ends. Wow, they got to him, the quarterback, so many times. Like, they were in his face constantly. There's going to be some guys to watch in the draft on this UCLA defense, like I say, because they were fantastic. Outside linebackers and the defensive line, like, they properly set the edge and they made everything go outside. And yeah, like I say, Hawaii just tried to sling it for their lives 40 times, and it resulted in cheap interceptions, like I say, and that was all she wrote. But no, UCLA, like you say, they'll want to carry on this momentum. They will play, say, harder teams, but that was as well as it could have started for a Chip Kelly offense that created a lot of generated offense. So it was a really fun watch. Like I say, Hawaii have struggled, like I say, the quarterback. They lost, I know Cole McDonald left the draft a year or 2 ago. Like I said, they're breaking in a new guy. So it's going to be a difficult year for them, I feel.
Yeah, I think the intriguing thing about this game for me was just how dominant the trenches were on UCLA's side. And that struck a chord with me because, if we're thinking about the Lions this year, we've really put a lot of resources into our trenches. And if you can if you can get your will implanted onto a game, if you can dominate in the trenches like they did, both offensively and defensively, then you can protect the more vulnerable areas of your team. And if anyone, if you want to watch highlights of any game this week, this is certainly the one to watch if you want to see how the Lions can be good if they get the trenches won and if, the guys really stand up and are noticed there. I mean, as Ryan said, the Hawaii quarterback was running for his dear life half the time. I mean, there was one particular play where Hawaii lined up and I think they had a double tight end set on, both blocking and a fullback in, and the 4-man rush from UCLA breached and sacked the quarterback. That's with 3 extra hands in there on the line helping. That's just how dominant they were. But it was a really good thing to see, because if it's done right, those trenches win your games, even despite, if your secondary is not the best in the world. So from a line standpoint, that was really good to see. But I mean, Charbonnet, we've mentioned him. I just want to focus on him. He had such a good game this week. Whether this form is going to continue or not, I don't know. But for his first touchdown, yes, it was quite an easy one. The offensive line just caved in Hawaii's D-line, and I mean, they caved them in, and it was a simple walk-in. But the second touchdown was impressive. It was so impressive. There was a gap down the right-hand side of the offensive line, which he took. But after that, he got blocked in by his own guy. He had to change direction. He slipped a tackle from behind him. The guy had 2 arms round him, and he somehow managed to slip out that tackle. He runs straight into another defender because of this again, somehow managed to worm his way out of it, spies a little gap in the secondary, and with two guys clinging onto him, somehow again still runs through, breaks them both off, and just then whacks off a 40-yard run, takes it right to the house. I mean, it's an incredible play and a one we'll try and put up just to show you how good it was. And then the third was even, that was really good as well. He was in Duke City. He was cutting in, out, in, out. The defensive backs had no ideas where he was going and he was going in, and he was there. But it was such an impressive performance. Is he draft eligible this year?
I'm not sure. Don't quote me. He could be a junior, so I'm not sure. Like say, he'll soon be eligible because he spent a while at the Wolverines. He won't have much eligibility left at UCLA.
I think he spent 2 years there, so it's going to be interesting to see. But
could be next year,
yeah. Sorry, go on.
He's a good size of he's hard to bring down because he's got size, he's 6'1". Also, he's got that elusiveness and agility to change direction. I'm hoping to see if UCLA can be real contenders in the Pac-12. They've got, I want to see if they can do it in the conference games because this may be the best team they've had since Josh Rosen was there.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, again, I want to see how they do against the better teams, but the trenches there, they look like they could be capable of beating anyone on their day if they play like that again. It really was a sight to behold, and it was a really good game, a nice sort of welcome back to the NCAA for watching again. But we will see. And Charbonnet, we're watching you. We're going to see how you get on. But we're going to move on anyhow because we've still got a bit to go through. Got 2 games left. So the next one, this was a battle of the independent schools, once more from the FBS Independents against CUSA, the CUSA division. So this was the New Mexico State Aggies playing against the UTEP Miners. UTEP is the University of Texas, El Paso. And once again, another blowout. UTEP won 30-3 with very, little difficulty in this one. So New Mexico's side at quarterback, Jonah Johnson threw 8 of 24, which is barely 33% completion for just 82 yards. And he got pulled, and his backup quarterback, Weston Eggert, came in. He threw 1 of 9 for 7 yards. I don't know what that is. I think that's about 11% completion. Just absolutely zero going on in the quarterback room there. In the running game, Jawan Price got 9 carries for 37 yards. That's just 4 yards a carry. And in the receiving game, only one guy cleared 20 yards. Dominic Gicinto, he had 2 receptions for 31 yards. Respectable 16 yards a throw, but again, not much going on there. On the defensive side, they were a lot busier. Linebacker Trevor Brohard, he got 7 solo tackles, 4 assisted tackles, and linebacker Dalton Bowles had 5 solo tackles, 2 assisted tackles, and 1 interception, although it was a particularly good one. On the UTEP side, quarterback Gavin Hardison, he went 11 of 16 for 250 yards, a touchdown, an interception. Their running back room now, they have a really good running back trio at UTEP. So Ronald Awat won 11 for 74 with a touchdown. Quadre Wadley went 6 rushes for 51 yards, and Dion Hankins went 11 rushes for 50 yards and a touchdown. Very effective for them that day. And wide receiver Jake Cowing had himself a day. He went 5 for 158 yards at 32 yards per catch and a touchdown, which was on a 72-yarder throw. Was very impressive. And Justin Garrett went 4 for 74 at nearly 19 yards per throw. And the defense, they just rotated them in after a long time. They shared out the stats all over the pitch. Another blowout, Ryan. UTEP, are they going to be doing much this year, or is this just really bad opposition from the independents again?
This is just really bad. UTEP won't be doing anything. Like say New Mexico State, that is as bad as the first game could go. Like say, generated absolutely no offense. Offensive line, like say, had a mare. Like say, quarterbacks, just the touch wasn't there. Like the throws were just, people weren't getting open, overthrowing. Like you say, just about as bad as it goes. Like you say, from even 2 quarterbacks, couldn't generate anything on the ground. Like you say, Like I say, I bet their punter had great numbers. That's probably about the only thing, like I say, that could have gone well. Like I say, on the other side, UTEP, like I say, they were just a juggernaut. Like I say, a trio of running backs over 50 yards makes it so easy when it takes all the pressure off your running back when you can rush for nearly 200 yards. And he was able to just pick his shots. Like I say, now he's 70% accurate because the defenders were scared and they were honouring the run, and the wide receivers made him pay for it on very little touches. So yeah, like I say, they were unstoppable on the day, and like I say, they'll chalk that one up. But like I say, tougher days will come. But no, like I say, that'll give them great confidence going into the season. Like I say, the quarterback's got his hot hand already.
Absolutely. Don't think there's much more to say on that one. So we're going to move on to the last one, but there is a lot to say for this one because there is some personal involvement for you in this. So this is our only interdivisional match of the week. So this was the San Jose State Spartans. They are champions of the Mountain West Conference. They dethroned Boise State quite emphatically last year. They're looking to show that that wasn't a fluke and retain their crown over there. And they were playing the Southern Utah Thunderbirds. Now they play in the FCS. Now, if you remember the football championship subdivision, a lower division than the FBS. These guys play in the Big South, obviously a lot smaller school. For a champion in the FBS, you're expecting them to maybe put out a big result here, and they did. Another one-sided result. San Jose State won 45-14, and Southern Utah's next opponents are our very own Ryan's Arizona State, I believe. So I'm sure he might have had a vested interest seeing how they got on this week, although I'm not sure they're going to put up a great deal of opposition to them. Just to quickly go through the stats, on San Jose State's side, their quarterback, Nick Starkel, he's one of the guys to watch in the division this year, potential to do well in the draft. He went 16 of 27, 394 yards, 4 touchdowns, a rushing touchdown, and an interception, which I believe was pick sixth. And then, so really good stats from him, although level of opposition not the highest in the world. In the running game, Tylen Evans went 12 carries for 91 yards at nearly 8 yards a carry with a touchdown. And then it was a free-for-all in the wide receiver department. So wide receiver Charlie Ross, three catches, 77 yards and a touchdown. Tight end Derek Dees Jr., 3 for 72 and a touchdown. Tight end Sam Olsen, 1 reception, 70 yards and a touchdown. Obviously another big throw there. Wide receiver Jermaine Braddock got 2 for 66 and a touchdown, and wide receiver Isaiah Hamilton got 2 receptions for 57 yards. The bombs were getting thrown at the FCS defense there. And then on the defensive side, inside linebacker Kyle Harmon, 4 solo tackles, 5 assisted tackles. On Southern Utah's side, quarterback Justin Miller went 15 of 29 for 117 yards and a rush touchdown. In the running game, nothing going there. Karen Davis, 5 rushes, 36 yards. Davis Moore, the third, 10 rushes, 32 yards. And in the receiving game, only 2 guys went over 20 yards. Philip Brown, 2 for 32. Isaiah Williams, the running back, 3 for 27. None of the receivers got in the top 2 receiving, which says probably how much their day went to shit. On the defensive side, cornerback Kobe Singleton, he had a good game, 3 solo tackles and a pick 6. And safety AJ Stanley had 3 solo tackles and 4 assisted tackles. Ryan, the Mountain West champions, starting off against your first opponents next week. What did you see in this one?
I'll say credit where it's due. Of all the blowouts, it was the FCS team that actually probably put up the best fight, even against all the other FBS. The Thunderbirds, like I say, they gave it a good go. The quarterback wasn't terrible, like you say, completed some passes. Like I say, it was just that defense, they just couldn't have any answers for it. So they gave it a good go. Like I say, for a title defense, this is what you want. This is probably the perfect dream start to them defending their Mountain West title. Like I say, it wasn't the competition, but like I say, when you can have 4 or 5 guys go over 50 yards receiving and you can spread the ball around that well, like that means he's in rhythm. He's going through all his reads, like he's just scouring all over the field. Like that is probably the best start you can give to a quarterback who before last year was lost. Like, he was out at sea. People had completely written off Nick Starkel. Like, and last year he arrives, rocks up at San Jose State, delivers them their first championship, and God, it was about 60 years. Like, this guy came out of nowhere. He's got a big arm. He'd been around a while. People knew about him. This guy is probably going to get close to maybe 4,000 yards and maybe like 40 touchdowns. I think this guy is going to have, he could very match the guy who wins the Heisman in numbers. He's going to have a huge year, whether they win the conference or not. And I think he's resurrecting draft stock. Like, say, he's not going to go that high because, like, say, he is limited, but the ceiling and the floor, they're still yet to be determined. So I think personally, he's on a one-man mission, and I think it's a perfect start for him. Like, say, as a team, they're going to be probably just odds-on favourites, maybe to defend their title. But like, say, it will come down to the bigger games. Like, say, people won't watch too much into this result, but no, it's a perfect start for a team to build some confidence. That's hopefully going to aiming to get maybe a New Year's Six bowl. They could be hoping for, like, say, 10, 11 wins again this year.
Yeah, I think they go to USC next week, is it? I think they're playing Keaton Slovis, which is obviously going to be a much bigger proposition for them. Obviously, Starkel, he had big question marks coming up because he lost his two best receivers last year. But as you've seen, he's got three receivers and two tight ends over 50 yards. I mean, San Jose, they gave up those 14 points in one quarter. I think the touchdown went in, then there was the pick six. Are the nerves going to get to them against Boise State, do you reckon? Did you see a lot there to say that, maybe they're not going to do? And did you see anything from Southern Utah that would concern you as an Arizona State fan? Because obviously you play them this coming weekend.
Luckily not, no. I didn't see anything. Like you say, they might score some points, but the Sun Devils should handle the business, like I say, as an outsider and a potential Pac-12 champion. But yeah, like I said, they'll be concerned. Like you say, obviously concentration dropped. Like I say, and if at any point they show that wrinkle or weakness, let's say against USC, they could get flattened. Like, this is definitely a team to watch next week, because let's see how they do in comparison against one of the big boys. Let's see if Starkel can keep it up. So next week will be interesting. Like I say, I'll keep an eye on their results and see if they can hang with the big boys. But no, like I say, not many to worry about. Like I say, next week is a free shot for them. I think it won't be a game that decides if they win the championship. They could just go to USC and try cause a big upset.
Fair enough. So anyone listening, Arizona State, don't bet on them this weekend, because they're not going to have any issues against Southern Utah. And it's Starkel versus Slovis, one that we will probably highlight in next week's pod. But we're going to move on now anyhow, because we've still got quite a bit to go through. So that's what's happened this week in college football, but we have a huge stacked weekend coming up, and we're going to take a little look at that. But first, we're just going to give you a little update. So obviously last week you heard of our ones to watch list. We're both looking at 5 guys this season every week, seeing where they play, how they develop. And these are guys we're thinking that may end up on the Lions eventually. And what we're going to do is we're just going to give you a quick update on where they're playing and what we expect from them. So Rye, I'll start with you. Your first guy. Who's your first guy, and where's he playing this week, and what are you expecting?
Well, the first guy I picked was Malik Willis, the quarterback for the Liberty Flames. And they open on Saturday, 4th September, against Campbell, who are, I think they're called something like the Fighting Camels, which is a fantastic name. They're a very small school, and I imagine this is going to be as one-sided as a game you're going to see. He is probably going to rush for 100 yards and pass for 300 plus. He is going to go out there and he's going to stomp on them. I'm hoping, like, they will not put up a fight. So that one is probably not going to be the best showing of his credentials, but I'd expect them to win comfortably.
Yeah, I expect the Malik Willis hype train to start next week, simply just because of the numbers he uses. So my first guy is Carson Strong. He's quarterback of the Nevada Wolfpack again, one of these guys in the Mountain West who could be potentially a guy who goes quite high in the draft next year. Nevada start off against California this weekend. I believe that's on Friday. And again, I'm expecting a strong performance off him. California are a decent opposition on the day. I'm not sure what they're looking like going into this year, but he needs a really good year all round to really crack up in the draft, and I'm hoping he can do that. So I'm hoping for a good one from him here. Cali, are they really good? Are they good this year, or are they not as good?
They're going to be hit and miss. Like I think they've got Chase Garbers. Like I don't think there won't be any contention in the Pac-12, but they're no mugs.
Yeah, I think we saw a little bit of them last year doing the highlight reels for the rookies. But yeah, we'll move on. Carson Strong, expect a really good showing from him. Your next guy, Ryan.
Well, we're going to the last game in week one. Like I say, Ole Miss. Now, I don't know what we're going to get from Matt Corral. This is a trap game week one. Louisville Cardinals. They're a good side. What he needs to do is go out there. He needs a clean, safe game. You don't need to light them up because they're a good side. I'm hoping that he's going to not throw an interception. That would be a good start to the season for him. But I'd say it's a game Ole Miss could very well get upsetting. I think it would be an upset if they lost. But I'm hoping they can go there and handle their business. Like I say, and he'll put in a reasonably good showing. Like I say, out the blocks.
Yes.
But like I say, it's the start of his draft stock. People are watching him very closely. Any mistakes will be quickly highlighted.
Yes, probably one who's going to have one of the most conflicting draft reports in some time, maybe. Moving on for me, my second guy, Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver from the Ohio State Buckeyes. I'm massively high on him and quite happy to give the Lions first pick away to him right at the moment. So the Buckeyes are playing Minnesota. Now, this could be a tough game for them because Minnesota are returning 20 of their 22 starters from last year. So it's an experienced team who are no slouches, but Ohio should be winning this pretty easily. So again, I'm going to be looking for big numbers from Garrett Wilson, certainly over 100 yards, maybe a few touchdowns, just a really big statement start to the season. But don't just watch him, watch Olave as well. Watch Smith. Oh, because I can't remember his second bit of his name, but there's three of them there, and I think they're going to wreak havoc on Minnesota. But it all depends. CJ Stroud's first game, it's going to be interesting to see how he does and how his receivers cope with him. So that's going to be one to keep an eye on. Ryan, your next guy.
This is going to be a big one for Ty Freifogel, the wide receiver from Indiana. They're opening up against Iowa, who are they've produced quite a few high-level defensive players in the draft a few years. They're an elite defense, and he is going to be expected to be the main man now. What Philly has gone. So for Michael Penix Jr., he's going to be leaning on very heavily. We're going to see just exactly what Indiana, Ty, and Michael Penix are about this opening week, because Iowa could very well be a dark horse for the conference. So I'm hoping he's going to be able to put up some respectable numbers and hold his own against some very experienced defensive players. So it's a big week for him already.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing that game. That's one I'm going to be keeping an eye on here, and say Freifogel, big chance for him to impress. And speaking of big chances to impress, my third guy, Treylon Burks, the wide receiver from the Arkansas Razorbacks. Now they're playing Rice, and they're nearly 20-point favorites for this game. Arkansas are, and that is not going to be the case for the rest of the season. As I mentioned last week, they have the hardest schedule in the country, and they're up against some top teams, and they're really up against it. So this week, Treylon Burks, I want to see him have an absolute field day. You know, he's going to be coming up against some good secondaries, so he really has to dominate against the weaker teams. So, you know, I'm expecting high 100 yards here, a few touchdowns from him. I think anything less than, you know, he really does need to put away the bad sides this year, and then he needs to show up against, you know, some of the elite secondaries he's going to be facing. So I'm hoping for a big blowout win for Arkansas here and plenty of yards for him to give him some traction going forward. Right?
My next guy is the cornerback Travius Hodges Tomlinson for TCU. Now they open up with a nice starting game against Duquesne, an FCS school. So what I want to see from this young feisty cornerback is, well, I want to see him shut out a wide receiver that's potentially going to be bigger than him, stronger than him, because there's a lot of bodies out there that are. I want him to hold his own. Let's see if he's able to rack up any interceptions. But like I say, I want to see how quickly and how his hips move, how that elite closing speed he's got. Let's see it on show. I want to see him keep everything in front of him. I'd like to see him be part of a unit that gives up very little on the day to a smaller, minor possible opponent, but we don't want any surprises. So I'm hoping he's going to lock down his side of the field.
Yep, absolutely. And hopefully he's able to do so. Moving on to my next guy. So now we are with Christian Harris, the linebacker from the Alabama Crimson Tide. And he's another one. You know, the two guys, Garrett Wilson, Christian Harris, who I'd quite gladly give a first round pick away for right now. He's going to have a huge season, and they are playing against Miami, Florida. Now, there's several Miami teams, which is why we have to put the area they're from in after there. But Miami, Florida are led by Derek King, and this is a potential for a big upset. We'll talk about this game a bit later, but Derek King, he has two receivers in Mike Harley and Charleston Rambo, who are potential 1,000-yard plus guys. So this is an offense that is not going to be a slouch. And if Christian Harris is going to want to really stamp his authority on a game, on a good side, this is a good chance for him to shut down this offense and really do some damage there. If he has a good week, it'll be a very noticeable result. Because even though I think Alabama are 20-point favorites, but there is an opportunity for an upset here. It just depends on how King and his receivers play. But Harris is going to have a lot of work to do, so we'll see how he gets on. Your last guy, Rye?
Well, like I said, last guy is one of my guys, linebacker Merlin Robertson. Like I say, we've mentioned, like I say, my Arizona State Sun Devils, they're opening the season ranked 25th in the top 25 rankings. What I want to see from him is he's ranked in, I think, the top 50 edge players on some of the grading sites like PFF, Draft Network, having quite highly. What I want to see him against, I want to see him dominate the edge. I want to see him seal it as an outside linebacker. But I also want to see him in the backfield. He's got 7 sacks and 4 forced fumbles in the last 2 years, with an interception every year. Like I say, nearly 80 tackles. So he is someone that is all over the field. He's a defensive leader. I think he's going to be one of our better draft picks. There's a very well chance the Lions could sniff at him next year. So I want to see him getting those tackles for loss and a sack on the opening day. I want him to harass that quarterback who's already off to a bad start and just compact their misery even more. So I'm hoping he's going to be all over and showing his credibility for the upcoming draft.
And, you know, if the Lions are going to potentially sniff at him, then hopefully, you know, we see a good performance and we will let you know how he gets on. My last guy, this is my wild card. It's Edefwan Olafosio. He's a linebacker for the Washington Huskies, where we drafted Levi from. This week, they are playing against the Montana Grizzlies, who are actually an FCS team. So this is an interdivisional matchup. They've played each other 19 times. Washington have won 17 of them, and it's over a century since Montana last won this fixture. This one is already decided. Washington are going to win. It's just a case of how much by. But for Olafosio, 1, hopefully he starts, and 2, I want to see him rack up the stats in this because he is not going to have a better opportunity to go out there, get some hits on the quarterbacks, get plenty of tackles, expecting him to rack up the stats in this one. And if he doesn't, then I'm going to have a look at what he's done, because he really, really should be. Now, that's sort of a look at our ones to watch this year, where they're playing. Now we're going to look at the fixtures themselves, because there are so many games to look forward to this coming weekend. And I'm just going to start us off with Georgia and Clemson, because we've been asked on Twitter by Michael on there, which team losing this fixture has the worst case for then going to the playoffs, Georgia or Clemson? Now, you know, Georgia, Clemson, this is the battle of the quarterbacks. It's DJ for Clemson versus JT for Georgia. A lot of hype about JT Daniels. If he can stay fit, I'm massively high on him. Ryan, who's screwed if they lose this one, or is just the loser in general screwed for the playoffs?
It's a tough one. I'm going to lean towards the loser is screwed, because the loser has to win out. In this modern day and age, it doesn't matter how much the committee loves you, you cannot make the playoffs with 2 losses. Whoever goes 0-1 has to go on a bounce and run the table and get in at an 11-1. Simple, but you do not get in if you have more than one loss. So there's favouritism in general, but there'll be no love lost, like you say, that whoever loses must win out. That includes Clemson, who are the CFP's darling sweetheart. Like, I don't think if they got a loss anywhere else on their schedule, like 10-2, like it'd be very hard to even make a case for them. So whoever picks up this week one loss is already automatically on the back foot in making the playoff race. So that in alone makes it very intriguing. It would be fantastic to see Clemson lose because they'd be instantly backed into a corner. And then when they played the likes of North Carolina, they would be in almost a no-lose situation. Like, this is going to be a fascinating matchup. And I can't wait to see it, like I say, because who knows what does JT Daniels have in the locker?
Can Georgia win? I mean, I'm big on JT Daniels, so I believe he does have it in the locker to, if he's healthy, to really pull off an upset like this. And I like Georgia's team. I think they've got a lot of good weapons on there. Their defense is good enough if it performs on the day. I think they can upset here, but I mean, what about you? Are you a little bit more pessimistic on this one, or I mean, 'cause it's hard because DJ's starting. It's his first year, and I really want DJ to do well because I want him on the Lions in 2 years. But it would be good for Georgia to win, wouldn't it?
It would. Clemson, week one, breaking in a new quarterback. You're probably not going to get a better chance to beat them. Like, they could start slowly. This is a fantastic chance for Georgia, which, if they're real contenders for the title this year, they must take up both hands. Like I say, even if they lose, like, if they can keep it like 40-44, if they can keep in it all the way and hang with them, like I said, they will show them to be actual contenders. So I think Georgia have a lot more to lose than Clemson.
Fair enough. Let's say it's going to be a great game to watch, and hopefully it delivers. Other games, what are you watching this week? What's caught your eye on this week's
The
conference?
first one that jumped out at me was Central Florida and Boise State. Now,
Damn it, I had that one.
Dylan Gabriel, like I say, Central Florida Knights, the last few years have been everyone's like non-Power 5 team. Like, they considered themselves national champions a few years ago when they went 12-0. They basically decided that they won the title, and everyone on Twitter agreed. Dylan Gabriel is a very interesting prospect at quarterback for this year's draft. Like, they've got some good stuff going on there. Like, they're just a well-built roster. Then you go on the other side. Honk Bachmeier had a shaky year last year. Boise State lost their Mountain West title. They'll be pissed. Like, this is a terrible game for them. Like, say, San Jose State had a nice game to break them into the year. Boise State get, well, frankly, a bit of a shitter. Like, this is not how you want to try and reclaim your crown, but it's a good test of your title credentials. This one has the potential to be a shootout. Like, I'm hoping they're going to go blow for blow, like, because we're gonna name a receiver later to look at. So this will be your first chance as well to see him. So it goes hand in hand. So that there could be some fireworks in this game.
Yeah, I mean, this was top of my list as well. I mean, it's interesting. I was looking at this, and they've never actually played one another. This is the first ever meeting between Boise State and UCF, if what I was reading was correct. And as you've said, both are coming off bad years. Boise State lost their title, which they've had a grip on for quite some time. UCF, not the greatest of years, although they produced the greatest safety that'll ever play the game, and I'll never get to see him on the Lions, but I'm still not bitter about that. It's going to be really good. And I think if Boise State can win that, I think that sends out a huge message to the Mountain West that they're coming back for their title. And you probably, after week one, say that they had the rub on San Jose there if they can pull off this victory. But it's going to be a banger, and we will talk about it next week for sure. What else has jumped out for you this week?
There's a lot of them, but if you're talking about games that have got a lot on the line, Wisconsin and Penn State, like, those two are potential upsetters in that division. So these two opening up against each other, like, neither of those can afford a loss. So it's going to be really important, that game. Like I say, Penn State are coming off what I would consider a really bad year. Not a lot went right for James Franklin and his team last year. So to open up against Wisconsin, who are a reasonable powerhouse in that conference. Like I say, one of them, someone has got to challenge Ohio State this year, and it's potentially going to be one of these two. So, like I say, with Georgia and Clemson, the team that takes the loss is already on a huge back foot, like I say. But one of these two could very well just fly under the radar and make that championship game. And I'd give the current edge maybe to Wisconsin, like I say, because they're able to always establish a good ground game. But I'm pretty sure that Penn State recruited really well. They had some high-level recruits, so there could be some good freshmen on there. So this one is going to be one to watch, and it's going to be a battle.
Especially for fans of the Michigan side, because that's a Big Ten ding-dong, I believe that is, seeing how they get on. I think one of the others I highlighted, who I know I've already mentioned it, Minnesota and Ohio State. This is going to be interesting purely because Ohio are replacing a lot of their starters. And yes, they replaced them with really good talent, but Minnesota weren't a bad team last year, and they're returning 20 of the 22 guys. So it speaks to, experience, knowledge of playing together. It can be a possible upset if you do it right. And they're also returning probably one of the best running backs in the entire NCAA this year, in Mohamed Ibrahim. I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how he gets on, because he really has the potential to rip it up this year, doesn't he? And he's got a great challenge first off the top. If he can put up some, stats this week, the sky's the limit for him, isn't it?
Yeah, some people have him as like running back 4 in the next year's draft, and he is a bruiser. If you want to look at a physical specimen, like I say, this guy is jacked. He's tall, he's strong, he's a good runner, like I say, north and south, but can bounce outside. With Minnesota, it all comes down to quarterback play. Which Tanner Morgan are we going to see? If we're going to see last year's, they don't have a hope in hell. If we're going to see the 2019, maybe they do have a chance because he had a good year. So and he's also draft eligible. So for him personally, he needs a big year. Like I say, if he's got any chance, like say, even getting picked up in the late rounds, he's got to show up this year.
Absolutely. Like you say, he's really got to do well this year to have a good shot in the draft next. I mean, just having a look through a few others, obviously USC and San Jose, ding dong in the Mountain Conference again. Looking forward to that. I suppose, being as we're a Detroit Lions podcast, we should look at the Michigan sides. I mean, the Wolverines are playing Western Michigan. I would expect them to win that pretty easy, but you don't know with Jim Harbaugh and how it's going there. I mean, if they lost that'd be fucking huge. And
Oh God.
yeah, it would probably be on the scale of when they lost to Michigan State last year. It wouldn't be worth going on Twitter for those guys there. And speaking of Michigan State, they're playing against Northwestern, who are going to absolutely blow them out.
Yeah, that's a good start.
There's no chance really. I'm sorry, Michigan State Spartans fans, but you ain't beating Northwestern. That is not going to be pretty at all.
Florida State, Notre Dame.
I just seen that. Now, who's starting quarterback now for Florida State? Now Trask's gone.
It's Mackenzie Milton. It was the guy at UCF.
It is, isn't it?
He almost lost his leg in that horror injury. He's worked his way back. Like you say, everyone loves him because he's just a great story because he came back from a devastating injury. So that's a very tough opening for him. A Notre Dame team that's got Kyle Hamilton. So that could be one to watch, but just for neutral.
Yeah, Kyle Hamilton's going to be one to. I mean, can he break the top 5? Can he set the record for a safety in next year's draft, do you reckon? If he has an absolute lights out bang up year, yeah, I think the top drafted safety ever is number 5. Can you see him beating that?
No. I don't think it matters how well his season is. He won't come off the board before Thibodeau and Stingley. Unless one of them has a bad year, but I just can't. I can see him equaling it, but if he breaks the record, something very strange has happened.
Absolutely. Right, we've already highlighted a lot of fixtures here. We'll probably just close out with one more, and this is one we've mentioned already. Alabama versus Miami, Florida. Can De'Aaron King upset Alabama? I mean, there's a lot of people saying it could happen. He's got the receivers there. He does have the offensive tools, but I guess can that defense stand up to the Tide's defensive line and the offensive line, because they're always just so dominant in games, aren't they? Can you see an upset, or are we not on board the King hype train?
No, and it's not because I don't like King, it's the defense. I think that they could possibly put up points with them, but going back and forth, can they keep them out? I don't think they can keep out. I'll be surprised who keeps out that Alabama offense this year. Because, like I say, they are every year. Like, they are just a juggernaut. They score when they want, like I say, and it's like up to them to stop them. Like I say, there's some players on that Miami side to watch. Like we say, we highlighted a few weeks ago, Bubba Bolden, the safety. Like, he is going to have a really busy day. Like, that's going to be a big one to watch for his draft credentials. But like I say, it's going to be interesting to see. I think it could be high scoring, but in the end, I think that Alabama run out comfortable winners.
Yeah, I mean, we're just getting spoiled this week, aren't we? There's so many good battles this first week, and I don't know how we're going to condense it into one pod next. But you know, it's going to be a good weekend, isn't it, for college fans? And if you're a first-time college fan, get watching because there's so many good fixtures, isn't there?
Oh yeah, you don't usually get a week like this. Like a week where there's so many things on the line, like where losers are instantly, some of them are already like eliminated from contention. Like these are big games and they mean a lot. You can't just recover from a loss so easily in just a 12-game season.
Absolutely. You know, it's one of the weird things about college football. Season can be over after 1 week, and you think, no, surely not, but it really does. So these are big games with a lot on the line, as I say, but we'll come back to this next week. You know, going to be a lot to chat about. So moving on to our last little bit, because where we've been going for a little while again. So we were asked by one of our Twitter followers, Phil Coop. He asked me a few weeks back, could we have a look at receivers who aren't in the national media limelight at the minute for this coming draft? Ones who are good, but are not really known about. So Ryan's taken a deep dive into some of the smaller schools, the smaller divisions, and he's been, ferreting around trying to find them, and he's come up with a few guys. So I'll pass it over to you, Ryan. What have you found on your journey for diamonds in the rough wide receivers, and what can we expect from them this year?
Like you say, I've looked for guys that all offer something different. So the first guy I'd say is a red zone threat. It's Dontario Drummond. Like I say, he's a senior at Ole Miss. He's about 6'1", and I've picked him based on not what he did last year, but what he can do this year. Elijah Moore is gone. Kenny Yeboah has gone. His real only competition to be Matt Corral's number one is Braylon Sanders. So I'm expecting that Drummond, who had 400 yards last year, but 7 touchdowns on only 25 receptions. So nearly every 5 catches was a touchdown. Now that's a really good average. And nearly 17 yards a catch, which tells me, like say, when he gets towards the end zone, is someone that you look for. I think if Corral has a big year this year, that automatically means he will, because he is going to be someone now that is going to take a lot of carries. He's going to get a lot of targets because people have moved on. He's moved up the depth chart. So I'm hoping he's going to prove to be a very solid possession and red zone receiver this year. My next pick is someone that some people know. It's the Purdue Boilermakers, and this is David Bell. Now he's a savvy route runner. He's very crisp. He has a nice route tree. I think this is just an all-round, very solid guy. Like he plays in one of the toughest divisions against some of the hardest defenses. And he's a young man. Like this man he's only 20, but he's got a good frame at 6'2", 205, and he's coming off, well, what you can say is 2 fantastic years, and I still don't think people are talking about him. 1,600 yards and 15 touchdowns, and he's still doesn't get talking about that much because Purdue, for the best part of it, aren't a very good team, and that's through no fault of his own. I think he's going to go and have another big year again, like say against some of those Big Ten teams, like say good defenses. Like they were really close in some games last year, but I think he's going to put up maybe another 1,000 yards. He could, like say, climb up his score rankings. I think he's going to be a guy that will leave Purdue as one of the better receivers in history. And I think he's going to cement himself in those middle rounds as a guy that just should be getting more love, but isn't, probably because the school he comes from, that usual bias. Now, my third guy, this guy is someone that is electric, and he's also a very good returner, which is something the Lions will look for, because we're in the need for one now and could be in future. This is Khalil Shakir. He's a receiver from Boise State Broncos. So he's going to be one to watch this week against UCF. Now, he's great in all phases. He's got a good build. I'd say in the last few years, he's got nearly 2,000 yards receiving, and he's got quite a few touchdowns. But also, when it comes to kickoff and punt returns, he racks up the yards. He's also able to break away and gain touchdowns, and he's someone that is going to be a weapon in all phases of the game. You can use him as a running back, put him on a jet sweep. He won't be limited to the next level, and I feel like he's going to be someone that will benefit if Hank Bachmeier can have a good comeback year. But if not, I think he's going to be someone that offers quite a few different things at the next level. So I think he's going to be someone that will have draft crushes talking about him. And if we're going to go to the smallest name, this is it's Jaquez Ezzard. Now, this man is from the Sam Houston State, which are one of the bigger FCS teams, and he's regarded by some as maybe the best wide receiver in the FCS as a general. He's coming back, like say, he's smaller. He's only 1.75 meters, so he's not someone that's very big, but he makes up for that, like say, with just blistering athleticism. Like say, 2018, he had over 1,000 yards, nearly 36 yards, nearly 30 yards on average, with lots of touchdowns. He's someone that is going to look great at the combine. He's going to work out really well for a smaller guy. Like say, he's coming off a year that was affected by COVID, and he still managed nearly 900 yards off just 38 receptions with 9 touchdowns. So this is a guy that just extends plays. He gets in behind defenses, and his yak and average yards are they're phenomenal. Like, if you can go through college and average 20, 30 yards of reception across 2-3 years, when you get that ball in your hands, you make things happen. You can be a special guy. Like, this is someone that will get national attention because they make the playoffs every year and they make a deep run. But if there's people that don't know about him now, then you should go and find him, because he's someone that has big play potential, but in a smaller frame. Like the FCS this year is absolutely loaded.
And before anyone writes off the chance of an FCS wide receiver doing it big in the NFL, I believe one Cooper Kupp came from the FCS, so it is not impossible, to get good guys out of there. I think Darius Leonard, the Giants wide receiver, he is also from the FCS, as is Kaderil Hodge, which is a name Lions fans will be getting used to because we signed him off waivers today. So we already have an FCS receiver here. Possibility of having one next year. I mean, out of all those guys, who are you expecting maybe to end up highest in the draft if we're really looking for the one diamond in that lot? Where I think we're going?
I think David Bell, because I think currently he's probably got the biggest profile of work to work from, and also pretty much in the biggest conference as well. Like you say, he will get more attention and more TV time being at Purdue. Like I say, because it's more the competition that you're playing, not the team is on. And they've got a reasonably good quarterback in Jack Plummer coming back this year. I don't expect them to make many noises, but he's going to be the biggest weapon they have. And I think he's got the most NFL ready frame of all of them, because he's the only one over 200 pounds. So he's someone that could be almost pro ready with just a bit of fine tuning.
And I think that's it. I think, I've done a little bit on these guys, and I think I would agree maybe because, as you said, Dontario Drummond, he is attached to what Matt Corral does at Ole Miss, and Khalil Shakir, he's at Boise State. There's a lot of pressure on them to get the title back. Those two are sort of really intertwined with their franchises as they are, whereas a guy like Bell can go about his work, just rack up the numbers against good opposition because the expectation isn't as high for the team, I guess. So, I mean, that could probably work in his favor as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, like I say, no one, like I say, other than Purdue fans, no one really cares. I was looking at the Boilermakers, like I say. So their success or lack of success won't be detrimental. Like say, a bad year for the other two teams probably means that they're going to struggle as well. But like I say, he's just going to go about his business, his bell.
Right. Well, Phil, there you have it. You asked for diamonds in the rough, and you've got 4 there. So remember the names: Dontario Drummond, David Bell, Khalil Shakir, and Jequez Ezard. That comes to sort of the end of that. Is there anything else you want to mention from this first week, or have we about sort of covered everything that you want to?
All I'll say is like people refer to last week as week 0. Week 1 actually starts tonight. If you stay up till 12:30, you can watch the UAB, the Alabama Birmingham Blazers against Jacksonville State. And Jacksonville State has got one of the best quarterbacks maybe in the country. He's from the FCS, Zerick Cooper. He's got over 7,000 yards and 60 touchdowns in 2.5 years. He is phenomenal. He's going to be someone that could very well be a project next year. Could just be a fun game. So yeah, that starts week 1 pretty much tomorrow at 12:30. Like say if anyone's got SPN or BT or find it online.
Absolutely. Well, there you have it. You know, the week's going to start very soon. Get straight into it. It starts a great fixture to crack on with. So that ends pretty much everything for this week. First few games are in the bag. Big first weekend's coming up. We're going to look forward to talking about that next week. I can't even begin to think what games we're going to fit in and what we're going to talk about, because there is going to be a lot, but we are certainly looking forward to it. And as I mentioned last week, and Ryan's just said then, ESPN, YouTube, you can find these games on a lot of places. So, you know, do go ahead and have a look for them, because they are great fun to watch. So in terms of our next episodes, this coming Monday, 6th of September, we're back to the Roar of the Lions UK main podcast for the Detroit Lions. We are going to be doing our 2021 NFL season predictions for the Lions. And I can tell you now, even the Kool-Aid drinkers amongst us are struggling to get to what you would call a reputable number for their ceilings. I know, Ryan, yours has gone down a little bit, hasn't it, in light of what's happened with the cuts and what other teams have done. Yes,
I've probably lost about half a win already, and that could change. Well, we've just received a notification, which actually makes me think I've knocked off another half of a win because one of the players have gone.
Oh God, have they? I mean, I've got to go straight back onto Twitter after this.
Darren Fells has gone.
What the hell? Oh Jesus Christ! Right. Yeah. Right. We best wrap this up, and I'll get back onto Twitter. Quick shout out to everyone, by the way, who's interacting with us on Twitter. It's so busy at the minute, and we appreciate everyone who's taking the time to come and chat with us and discuss all things Lions. We always want to, and I'll be back on straight after this podcast. So do come and have a chat with us. So as I was saying, this coming Monday, 6th of September, 2021 NFL season predictions for the Lions. Bring your Kool-Aid, because you are going to need it to drown out the negativity that comes forth. It's not pretty. And then in terms of us for the college podcast, a week today, 8th of September on the Wednesday, we will be reviewing week 1 of the NCAA season. And I think we're going to probably devote the entire show to that, unless we have any requests in otherwise. Don't forget, you can always message us at Roar of the Lions on Twitter if you position groups you want to look at, players you want us to look at. We will happily do that for you. But I think next week we're going to be focusing entirely on the football. Just shout out our socials very quickly. If you want to find us on Facebook, our group, it's Detroit Lions Fans UK One Pride Worldwide. If you want to find us on our actual page, it's Roar of the Lions UK on Facebook. YouTube, you'll find us at Roar of the Lions UK. Twitch, ROTL_UK. Twitter and I on Instagram, you'll find us ROTL_UK, all in capitals. And the website, www.roarofthelionsuk.com, where you can find many interesting and up-to-date debates on the Lions. I know there's a few more pieces going on shortly. Any feedback, again, is appreciated. We will always get back and respond to you. So that's everything about done. Again, thanks ever so much, Ryan. It's been good to do this again. I must say, I know we've only done 2 weeks, but I'm really starting to enjoy doing these college shows as well. It's enjoyable, isn't it?
Yeah, no, it's fun for me, like I say, because like I say, other than Lions, I get to talk about something, like I say, that I love. I'm cooking up ideas, like say future episodes. I'm going to be doing best dressed. I'm going to be looking at some of the uniforms, like say, because that's something that's always attractive as well, because they can play in whatever the hell they want. So anyone got any questions or requests, like say, drop a comment on social media. I'll look at anything, and I'll do maybe I'll do a quiz, like say. We'll do something like say we'll have themes and stuff going out for like weeks, what people want to see.
There you go. That's it. The show evolving every week. And quickly before we go off air, speaking of uniforms, that picture you put up of your Sun Devils one today, they were sick. They looked
Yeah.
amazing.
That all yellow, like you say, whenever the Arizona State, whenever we put Sparky on the helmet, like it just always looks good. Like I say, I'm thinking, like I say, I'm going to do a mascot show because college have some good, but also some creepy mascots. Like there's some weird things out there. Like it's fantastic. It's a weird and wonderful world.
Exactly. There is plenty more to come on here, the best in entertainment college football. But until then, we shall bid you adieu as we rush off to find out what the hell the Lions are doing on the waiver wire. And God knows why we've let Darren Fells go. I need to try and work that one out. So until next time, everybody stay safe and one pride.
One pride.